I dropped to one knee in the center of the shopping mall's main atrium. Velvet 2-carat diamond ring box raised level with my line. This was the 9th time I'd formally proposed to Sue in 5 years of exclusive dating, every gesture tailored to what I thought she'd find romantic. Pre-booked Beethoven Moonlight Sonata from the atrium pianist, reservations for a private rooftop dinner after the proposal, a month's full salary poured into the custom-cut stone to match her repeated offhand comments about her dream engagement ring. My motive for continuing to propose year after year was simple, uncomplicated loyalty. I built my entire daily routine around accommodating every single one of her needs for half a decade, convinced consistent care would eventually wear down her hesitation to settle down with me. Every morning I woke an hour early to cook breakfast for her, logged 90-minute one-way commutes to live within 5 minutes of her office, auto-transferred 3,000 yuan monthly living stipends to her bank account without a single reminder, edited all her family's social media dance reels for free on nights I finished overtime coding. I believed steady, consistent devotion would earn a permanent life partnership. This blind hopefulness was the only emotion lingering beneath my usual calm, logical exterior, a soft flaw Sue had spent years learning to exploit for unending concessions. The piano melody rolled soft through the mall's overhead speakers, and I held the ring steady, waiting for the smile, the quiet tears I'd rehearsed imagining for months. Instead, Sue's jaw tightened, her heels clicking sharp against polished marble as she spun on her heel without a single glance at the jewelry in my hand. "Not this again," she snapped, voice loud enough to carry across the gathered crowd of shoppers, no attempt to mask her irritation or embarrassment at my public gesture. I froze mid-kneel, the velvet box heavy in my palm as every face around us locked onto the scene. Teen girls whispered behind their phones, middle-aged women shook their heads, a gray-haired retiree lingering at the jewelry kiosk stared over with obvious pity. A teenage girl's comment drifted clear across the hush between piano notes. "Total simp archetype, look how embarrassed she is." The pianist caught the awkward silence, abruptly cutting the classical track and swapping to a loud, folksy upbeat folk tune, giving me a subtle silent gesture of solidarity with a thumbs up over his keyboard. I folded the ring lid shut slow, brushing dust off my tailored slacks and rising to my feet without raising my voice or arguing with her retreating figure. My internal emotional shift hit fast. The faint, fragile hope I'd clung to for 5 years dissolved entirely, replaced by cold, calculated clarity. 5 separate marriage proposals brushed off with weak excuses, for more met with blank, wait longer, dismissal, and this 9th attempt laid bare that she had never intended to commit to me at all. Every sacrifice I'd voluntarily made for half a decade had been taken for granted, treated as an unnegotiable baseline rather than a gift of care. The elderly jewelry store retiree wandered over once Sue vanished down the mall corridor, clapping a gentle hand to my shoulder. "Son, don't beat yourself up over a woman who can't see what's right in front of her. If you're not returning that ring, I'd happily buy it off you for my wife's 65th birthday this weekend." I handed the full unopened box to him without a second hesitation, my tone flat and completely unshaken despite the public humiliation unfolding minutes prior. "It's yours, no charge. Wish you 2 decades of good years together." The old man's eyes misted over with surprise and gratitude, clutching the ring box tight to his chest as he thanked me repeatedly. I nodded once and walked straight for the mall exit, every step carrying a quiet new resolution. No more half measures, no lingering text exchanges, no passive waiting for a partner who'd never value the stability I offered. My plan for full, permanent erasure from her life formed fully on the drive back to our shared rental apartment. 5 irreversible action steps mapped out without a single moment of emotional breakdown. Tender resignation from my engineering role. Terminate the lease. Cancel my phone number. Delete all mutual social contacts. Relocate to a distant city thousands of kilometers away to rebuild without any lingering ties to this 5-year cycle of one-sided sacrifice. I unlocked the apartment front door and stepped inside, scanning every surface to tally just how much of the space belonged to Sue rather than myself. 2/3 of the closet hung packed with her blouses and dresses. The full bathroom vanity counter overflowed with her skincare bottles and makeup palettes. The plush blue British short-hair cat curled on my mattress was hers, yet I'd covered every vet bill, cat food delivery, and litter change for the full 2 years we'd housed it. I pulled out my phone to draft a short text informing her to retrieve all her belongings from the unit before I vacated, but my thumb slipped mid-send and hit the delete button instead of submit. Before I could undo the misclick, the read receipt notification popped up on screen, showing she'd already seen the partial message preview. My instinct was to avoid any further back and forth, so I immediately blocked Sue's number, unfriended, and deleted every person connected to her social circle. Her best friend Lynn, office coworker Zoe, elder sister Sue Shui, even her mother's square dance group chat I'd volunteered to edit highlight reels for twice weekly over 2 years. I refreshed my contact list afterward, staring at the remaining 43 saved entries, 30 of which were takeout restaurants and package delivery services, 0 close personal friends who didn't tie back to Sue's social orbit. A bitter, quiet understanding settled over me as I leaned against the living room wall. I'd surrendered every fragment of my own identity over 5 years to fit into her schedule, her preferences, her social obligations, with nothing reciprocal to show for the constant compromise. I never once prioritized my own hobbies, career advancement, or personal comfort for the sake of keeping her content, and the ninth mall rejection proved that endless accommodation only made me disposable in her eyes. I jotted down my 5-step exit plan on a blank notebook page, outlining each task with the same methodical precision I used mapping backend system architecture for work. Submit formal resignation to Richard at the software firm. Negotiate minimal 1-week handover window with no comprehensive technical documentation. Notify the landlord of lease termination. Arrange to leave all Sue's personal belongings for disposal or pickup. Visit Telecom Service Center to fully cancel my long-used phone number, sever all auto-pay subscriptions linked to her bank account. Deactivate every social media profile. Erase all shared photo albums and message logs permanently. Purchase one-way cross-country train ticket to Qinghai Province. Relocate entirely to a new city with 0 overlapping acquaintances or former connections. The next morning, I arrived at the corporate office 10 minutes ahead of my scheduled meeting with Director Richard, ready to deliver my resignation paperwork. He leaned forward across his desk the second I slid the printed document across the wood surface, panic etched deep into his facial features, hands braced against the table edge as if begging me to reverse my decision. Chris, you can't walk out right now. Our core transaction system goes live in 30 days. You're the sole engineer who built the entire backend framework single-handedly. Where's your full technical reference documentation for the team to maintain it after you leave? I held his gaze steady, voice calm and unyielding, no trace of anger or petty retaliation coloring my tone. You never formally requested written documentation over 3 years of development work, so none exist. I'll complete a 7-day handover window only, no extra days added. Richard sputtered, throwing out desperate bargaining offers. Private corner office, elevated pay grade, permanent transfer to the Shenzhen regional branch office, all of which I declined without deliberation. Every compromise he tried to dangle meant nothing to me now. My core priority was breaking free of the dual burden of work overtime and Sue's endless daily demands, 2 overlapping sources of unappreciated labor I'd carried alone for years. After 20 minutes of back-and-forth negotiation, he conceded to my strict 1-week handover timeline, slumping back into his leather chair defeated as I exited his office to return to my coding workstation. Mid-afternoon, I drove to the downtown mobile service outlet to initiate full number cancellation, the clerk pulling up a complete list of all third-party subscriptions tied to my phone line before processing the termination request. Her eyes flicked over the screen as she listed each auto-renewing service out loud, pausing on one recurring monthly bank transfer line item marked with Sue's account suffix digits. This recurring standing transfer runs every 14th of each month for 3,000 yuan, sending funds to account ending in 367. Would you like to permanently revoke this payment authorization during the cancellation process? I stared at the transaction record displayed on her monitor, a flood of quiet realization washing over me. I'd created that automatic deposit schedule back when Sue was a low-wage intern struggling to cover rent, fully intending it as temporary support until her salary increased. 5 years later, I'd never paused the recurring payments, never once asked if she still needed the regular cash influx, and she'd never volunteered to cancel the transfers on her own accord. Every month, without fail, I'd quietly wire her living expenses while she accepted expensive dinners, gifts, and weekend outings without offering to split any costs, taking my financial generosity as an expected baseline rather than a voluntary kindness. Terminate every single linked auto-pay agreement immediately, including that monthly transfer. I instructed the clerk without hesitation, watching as she clicked through each subscription and revoked the payment authorizations one by one. After the paperwork finished processing, I slipped the new unregistered SIM card into my wallet, stepping back out onto the sidewalk with a light, weightless sensation lifting from my shoulders, as if a 5-year heavy backpack had been stripped off my spine. I pulled up a city map application on my new temporary phone, tapping a random distant western province location to pick my relocation destination, Xining, Qinghai, over 2,000 kilometers away from the city, where I'd wasted half a decade catering to someone who'd never value my consistent devotion. I purchased a one-way hard sleeper train ticket departing 3 days later, then drove back to the apartment to begin systematically erasing every trace of my shared life with Sue, one task at a time. Chris, there's no way I can troubleshoot this if something breaks after you're gone. I only got basic backend training in school. None of this legacy chaos was covered in my coursework. I spun my office chair to face him, maintaining my usual calm, neutral tone without a hint of malice. My internal emotional shift here was subtle but definitive. I felt mild pity for the kid being thrown under the bus by Richard, yet I would not sacrifice my own permanent escape to fix a problem the director had created. I'd already fulfilled every legal employment obligation by completing the agreed 7-day transition. Going above and beyond would only delay my move to Qinghai and prolong the cycle of unappreciated labor I'd spent 5 years trapped in with Sue and this company alike. Restart the server instance first if errors pop up. If that doesn't resolve the pipeline lock, there's no viable temporary workaround under current resource limits. Leo's eyes turned glossy with quiet anxiety, staring at the wall of code on my monitor like a looming threat he couldn't outrun. I patted his shoulder once in a gesture of mild reassurance before returning to my typing. I knew Richard would downplay the system's fragility to save face once I left, but Leo's first-hand witness account would stand as irrefutable evidence if the director ever attempted to retaliate with false accusations down the line. That unspoken witness leverage sat at the back of my mind as I wrapped up the handover files before noon the same day. Back at the apartment that afternoon, I sorted all my personal belongings into one rolling suitcase and a canvas backpack. Every piece of clothing Sue had gifted me over the years, garish printed button-downs I'd never worn once, got tossed straight into the building's communal trash chute. My motive for purging every item linked to her was simple elimination of lingering anchors. I did not want to carry any physical reminders of the 5 years I'd wasted catering to her endless demands into my new life in Sheening. The entire living room floor was stacked waist-high with her wardrobe, makeup sets, hair tools, plush throw blankets, and assorted cosmetic bottles she'd left scattered across every surface of the unit we'd shared. I texted the landlord to notify him I was terminating the lease and leaving all her abandoned possessions for disposal, then grabbed the cat carrier off the bedroom nightstand. Mimi, her British short hair, curled up inside the crate staring at me with round, unblinking eyes. For 2 full years, I'd covered every vet visit, cat food delivery, and litter box cleaning duty. Sue only ever took photos of the cat to post on social media for clout, never lifting a finger to care for it day to day. I had no legal right to rehome the animal and no desire to hold onto a pet tied to her, so I headed straight to Sue's residential complex to drop the cat off at the building security desk. The doorman crossed his arms as I set the carrier down on the front lobby tile, sizing me up with knowing, skeptical eyes. Which resident's pet is this, and what's your relation to them? Unit 302, Sue. We're no longer in contact. Leave a notice for her to collect the cat when she's free. He hummed a low, understanding note that carried unspoken judgment, picking up a pen to jot down a reminder slip for the building bulletin board. I did not linger to wait around for Sue to show up, turning on my heel and walking back to my sedan without glancing over my shoulder once. Every small attachment to her daily routine, I severed chipped away one more thread of the old life I was desperate to leave behind. I'd fully packed my travel bags the night before my one-way train ride, sitting on the apartment balcony watching the sunset over the city skyline when the new mobile device buzzed with an unregistered incoming call Idaho. I answered the line without hesitation, my voice steady and flat with no trace of leftover hurt or anger. Chris, how dare you block every single one of my contacts and vanish without a single proper conversation? Sue's tone rose sharp and shrill through the receiver, thick with self-righteous outrage as if I'd wronged her instead of the reverse. I leaned back against the balcony metal railing, processing her reaction with detached clarity. Her core motive for reaching out was not longing or regret. It was panic at losing the steady, reliable support system she'd built around me over 5 years. Free labor, consistent financial stipends, unlimited emotional accommodation. She'd grown so accustomed to me never setting hard boundaries that she could not fathom I would permanently walk away the second her manipulative pattern crossed my non-negotiable bottom line at the mall proposal. My internal emotional shift here was complete detachment. I no longer felt the faint, hopeful ache that lingered in my chest for months prior. All soft regard for her dissolved entirely at the sound of her accusatory opening line. We don't have anything left to discuss, I replied evenly, cutting off her incoming stream of excuses before she could spin another round of victimhood. Are you throwing a childish fit over the mall scene? I was swamped with office stress that week. I didn't mean to snap at you. You can't just erase 5 years like it's nothing. Sue rambled rapidly, desperate to reel me back into the old cycle of me apologizing and compromising to keep her calm. I cut her off again before she could finish her manufactured hardship narrative. We're done, Sue. There's no point dragging this out any longer. A stunned beat of silence crackled across the phone line, followed by louder, indignant shouting. 5 years of my life invested with you, and you just walk off without taking responsibility for me? Who's going to cover my monthly rent and groceries if you're gone? Her unfiltered admission laid bare every layer of her self-serving reliance. No more subtle passive manipulation, hiding behind soft words, and delayed commitment excuses. Every auto-transfer payment, home-cooked meal, commute sacrifice, and free creative editing session had been a crutch she'd grown fully dependent on, and now that crutch was removed, she was scrambling to regain control. I stared out at the distant high-rise buildings lining the horizon as I delivered my final closing line to her. I've spent 5 years taking full responsibility for every single one of your needs, and it's never been reciprocated. I don't owe you anything more. The train station departure announcement echoed faintly from a nearby street speaker in the background, and I used that as a clean-out to terminate the conversation permanently. My train leaves in an hour. I don't have time for this call anymore. Sue screamed my name down the line, begging and demanding I stay to hash things out face-to-face, but I tapped the end call button and immediately added her unknown temporary number to my universal blacklist. No more incoming calls, texts, or social messages would break through the filter. I grabbed my suitcase and backpack, locked the apartment door one final time, and headed straight for the railway station without a single backward glance at the neighborhood I'd shared with her for years. The hard sleeper compartment was quiet once I boarded. Only a middle-aged man eating roasted chicken across from me, and an elderly woman traveling with her young grandson in the upper bunks. I laid back on the thin mattress and closed my eyes, exhausted from 3 straight days of erasing every trace of my old life. I drifted off to sleep fast, and only jolted awake hours later when the chicken-eating passenger tapped my shoulder to rouse me. "You were talking in your sleep a minute ago, muttering about a 2-carat ring being a waste of cash since no one appreciated it anyway." I rubbed my bleary eyes and sat up, brushing the comment off as a meaningless bad dream, though the subconscious thought lingered heavy in my mind. That ring, all the meals I'd cooked, every early morning commute, all the effort had been poured into a person who never valued a single piece of it. The stranger nodded sympathetically, offering a quiet observation that hit closer to home than any speech Sue had ever made. "Sounds like you wasted your time on someone who didn't deserve your care." Good riddance, honestly. I nodded in quiet agreement, gazing out the train window at the dark rural landscape rushing past the glass panes as the locomotive chugged thousands of kilometers west toward Qinghai. For the first time in half a decade, I had no pending favors to fulfill, no scheduled transfers to send, no early morning cooking shifts to rush through for someone who would never appreciate the labor. Complete, unburdened freedom settled deep in my bones, a quiet sense of peace I hadn't known existed before the mall rejection 9 days prior. I'd only woken up an hour after sunrise when my new phone vibrated once with an unlabeled SMS message. No attached name or contact photo were even. I stared at the 4 short characters typed across the screen for a full minute, running through every possible context Sue could be referencing. My first instinct was to dismiss it as empty bitter posturing, but the wording carried cold, calculated finality that didn't align with her prior screaming phone call. She was implying some kind of balanced financial tally had been closed between us, yet I'd never received any repayment, compensation, or settlement funds from her at any point during our split. My motive for digging deeper into the meaning of the text was self-preservation. I needed to uncover what hidden deal she'd struck to send that line, before any legal or professional blowback landed on my new life in Sheening. I pulled out a notebook and jotted down a chronological list of every financial exchange I'd had with Sue over 5 years. Monthly 3,000 auto transfers, holiday jewelry gifts, grocery and dining receipts I'd covered, vet bills for M, costume and skincare purchases I'd split for her, free dance video editing I provided with 0 reimbursement. I tallied the rough total sum mentally, the figure hitting a staggering 5-figure number that far outweighed any minor casual purchases she'd ever bought me over our relationship. If she thought we were financially balanced, there was an outside source of cash she'd received to write off all my past support, and that outside party could only be Richard, my former director. I filed the strange text away as a critical clue, resolving to gather hard proof of whatever secret arrangement Sue had made with my old boss once I settled into the Sheening Youth Hostel and had stable internet access to cross-reference past workplace gossip and financial trails. The train pulled into Sheening Station mid-afternoon, high thin mountain wind blowing cold against my cheeks the second I stepped off the platform, and I dragged my suitcase toward the downtown backpacker lodge ready to start a brand new chapter completely cut off from my old city's toxic entanglements. A strange friend notification popped up on my temporary social profile that Thursday night. The display name Lynn instantly recognizable as Sue's closest confidant from our old shared social circle. I hesitated before accepting the request, fully prepared for another round of manipulative guilt tripping, but the wall of screenshots she forwarded immediately erased all hesitation. Lynn explained she'd watched Sue's constant deception unfold for over 12 months, and could no longer stand by while I was publicly maligned as a vengeful saboteur. The chat transcript stretched back more than a year, long before the 9th mall proposal disaster. Sue and Richard had secretly met every week after office hours, trading romantic messages while I rose at dawn to cook her meals and commuted 90 minutes each way to keep her close to work. The critical exchange that unraveled everything landed near the bottom of the screenshot stack, the source of the cryptic where even text I'd received mid-train ride to Qinghai. Sue to Lynn. Richard gave me a lump cash payout to wrap up loose ends with Chris. All those years of his rent support, dinners, gifts, and free labor are fully offset by this check. Now I can tell everyone he left out of spite, and Richard can use the sabotage rumor to hide his botched company systems from investors. I sat frozen on the hostel's hard wooden bench outside the dorm room, scrolling through hundreds of lines of documented collusion, my heartbeat steady with no rush of rage, only quiet, complete disillusionment. Every time Sue stalled my marriage proposals with vague, wait longer, excuses, every cold shoulder she'd given me after grand romantic gestures, every night she claimed overtime to avoid our shared apartment. It had all been a layered act to keep her steady financial safety net, me, while pursuing Richard's higher corporate income on the side. Lynn also included screenshots of Sue bragging about her plan to push Richard to file a false civil lawsuit against me for commercial damages, fully confident the judge would take her emotional witness testimony over unreadable technical code records. This confirmed the 4th major plot twist. The lawsuit threat was pre-planned, coordinated retaliation designed to erase my reputation and lock me out of the software industry entirely. I forwarded every screenshot bundle to Kai the second I finished reading, along with Leo's witness statement and my archived code timestamp logs. Kai drafted a formal legal notice overnight, demanding Richard immediately retract all sabotage allegations and cease allowing Sue to spread defamatory rumors to industry contacts, or face a countersuit for malicious false accusation and reputational harm. The lawyer-certified letter was delivered to Richard's office the following morning. He called my Qinghai cell number within 2 hours of receipt, his voice stripped of all the arrogant authority he'd carried back at our old headquarters. Shaky and defensive the second, he opened the conversation. Chris, let's talk this out without dragging lawyers into the middle of everything. He tried to bargain, attempting to revert back to the paternal managerial tone he'd used to pressure me during my resignation. I kept my tone flat, factual, no raised volume or petty taunts, adhering to my consistent rational lead characterization from the start of the story. There's nothing to negotiate. You have two choices: publicly retract every sabotage claim circulating online and cut all financial ties with Sue, or we file counter-litigation with all time-stamped code records, witness statements, and her chat logs entered as official court evidence. Richard stumbled over disjointed, flimsy excuses for nearly a full minute before surrendering entirely. He admitted he'd hidden his year-long affair with Sue to avoid reputational damage at the firm and invented the sabotage narrative to redirect investor anger away from his years of refused development funding. He promised to issue a formal public correction on the industry forum by close of business that same day and end all cash transfers to Sue immediately after our call ended. I hung up without agreeing to any informal truce, trusting the paper legal trail to hold him accountable if he backtracked on his word. That evening, the viral forum thread was updated with a signed public apology from Richard's corporate communications account, fully retracting all claims of intentional code sabotage and accepting full managerial responsibility for the system's long-standing structural flaws. The comment section's accusatory chatter evaporated instantly. Dozens of developers left supportive messages acknowledging my 3 years of uncompensated overtime and under-resourced back-end construction. 6 weeks after the legal letter resolved the corporate defamation crisis, Zhao nominated me to represent our Qinghai data firm at a national industry summit hosted in a central Beijing 5-star conference hotel. I packed a simple gray cotton hoodie and my laptop, skipping tailored formal business, where, unconcerned with performative corporate prestige now that I ran my own independent regional project pipeline backed by venture capital funding. Halfway through the summit's afternoon networking break, I rounded a glass corridor corner and locked eyes with Sue, Richard hovering a half step behind her shoulder. Her tailored corporate blazer and styled salon hair looked polished on the surface, but her facial features carried visible exhaustion and quiet panic I hadn't seen during our 5 years dating. Richard's shoulders sagged forward. No trace of the self-assured director swagger he'd once carried around our old office. After cutting all cash support as promised, he'd refused to book her summit travel or cover her accommodation costs, leaving her scrambling to cling to whatever minor professional clout she could scrape up as his low-ranking admin assistant. Sue rushed forward the second our gazes met, stepping into my path to block my exit route, her voice shaky and desperate, a complete reversal of the cold dismissiveness she'd hit me with at the mall proposal months prior. Chris, can we sit down for 5 minutes and talk? I know I messed everything up. Richard's pulled all financial help away from me now. I realize how much I took for granted back when we lived together. We could start over. I'll be different this time, I swear. I paused only long enough to offer a single calm, neutral glance, no flicker of longing, bitterness, or even mild curiosity crossing my expression. Every scar from the 5 years of one-sided sacrifice had fully healed. Her manipulative pleas no longer triggered any emotional response inside me whatsoever. My motive for refusing to engage was simple, permanent self-preservation. Her pattern of emotional and financial leeching would never change, and my new life in Qinghai held zero space for a person who'd spent years viewing me as a disposable utility rather than a partner. I don't have anything to discuss with you, I stated plainly, stepping sideways to walk around her without slowing my pace toward the conference exhibition hall. Richard stood frozen 10 feet back, too ashamed to intervene or attempt to mediate a conversation between us, fully aware all his secret affair and slander schemes had been laid bare to the entire industry weeks prior. I did not glance backward once as I continued down the corridor, leaving both of them standing abandoned in the empty glass passageway, their collapsed alliance and shattered reputations left behind where they belonged. Trapped in the old city, I'd permanently fled. That night, a venture capitalist named Tang reached out to schedule a 2-hour one-on-one coffee consultation in the hotel lobby. He'd watched my 10-minute technical keynote presentation earlier that afternoon, impressed by my regional rural data infrastructure project framework, and offered a 7-figure seed investment to launch my fully independent Qinghai-based tech startup. I signed a preliminary cooperation memorandum before midnight, the funding amount over 100 times the value of the 2-carat diamond ring I'd gifted to a stranger on the mall floor the day I'd chosen to walk away from Sue forever. 1 full year after I boarded that westbound train to Qinghai, I owned a fully independent data development firm with a dedicated local team, a spacious sun-facing downtown apartment, and a new British short-hair kitten I named Second Ring. No more half-forgotten pets left for former partners to abandon. I split my days between leading regional government digital construction contracts and quiet evening walks along the riverside path, drinking cheap barley tea at the hostel's front desk with Xia whenever I stopped by to catch up. I never blocked Sue's lingering unknown phone numbers or Richard's occasional awkward outreach attempts. I simply never answered a single one. My new life so complete and self-contained their old drama held zero power to disrupt my peace. Sue's professional trajectory crumbled entirely after the summit exposure. Richard's firm downsized drastically amid investor losses, and he terminated her admin role to cut overhead costs, leaving her without steady income or a stable place to live. Richard's core transaction system never fully recovered from the years of neglected architecture, and his company was acquired by a competing enterprise at a steep valuation loss, stripping him of his director title and six-figure yearly bonus. The two people who'd colluded to manipulate and discard me a year prior were left scrambling for basic stability, while every sacrifice I'd once poured into their lives now fueled my own independent success. I no longer waste mental energy replaying the mall Atrium's judging crowd, or the weight of that velvet ring box in my Palm 9 proposals ago. The biggest victory wasn't legal retribution or industry prestige. It was the quiet, unshakable freedom of choosing myself first, walking away without screaming, fighting, or bargaining, and building a life where every dollar, every hour, and every small joy belonged solely to me. No more being someone's endless safety net to exploit. No more delaying my own dreams to cater to another person's shallow demands. I turned quiet, rational restraint into irreversible, total self-liberation, and that quiet one lasted far longer than any temporary romantic drama ever could. End of entire novel.